Hello and welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Show. I am your host, Jay Jones. Black Entrepreneur Blueprint was created specifically to educate and inspire Black entrepreneurs to launch, build, and grow successful businesses. Join us as we help build an economic power base in the Black community by promoting business ownership. If you are currently an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur, we invite you to join us every week here at Black Entrepreneur Blueprint.
Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, episode number 318. I'm your host, Jay Jones, and today we have another outstanding and informative show in store for you. Today, family, we're going to be talking to the CEO and founder of MediaTakeout.com. That's right, MTOnews.com, Mr. Fred Mwangaguhunga, and we're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey, starting out as a Wall Street attorney, now moving to building a large multi-million-dollar media company. Now, before we get to today's show, I just want to share a few things with the BEB family. First and foremost, I want to welcome all first-time listeners to Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Welcome to the BEB family. Please stick around until the end of today's broadcast, and I'm going to share all my social media contact information and my resource links, such as a link to my new book, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses, and also two platforms I created to help circulate dollars in the Black community, BeSmartByBlack.com and HireBlackFreelancers.com. Now, you can listen to this broadcast on all your major podcast platforms, and it is also a live video on YouTube. So make sure you go to YouTube, click the subscribe button, and watch this great interview with Mr. Fred Mwangaguhunga, CEO and founder of MediaTakeout.com. Now, let's go to the interview. We are live with Fred M. And Fred, I'm going to try to get this right. Mwangaguhunga. Is that it?
Yeah, there you go. You did a pretty good job.
Founder of MediaTakeout.com. Now, I know all of y'all who are watching this right now are fans of Media Takeout. So we're going to talk to Fred and talk about his entrepreneurial journey, where he came from, and we're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey with Media Takeout. So Fred, for my listeners who aren't familiar with you personally, just give me a little background on yourself, and then we'll jump into your entrepreneurial journey.
So I'm the founder and CEO of MediaTakeout.com. I founded it 16 years ago. Media Takeout is an entertainment, a lot of your audience probably already knows, but we're an entertainment-based news website. So we hit on kind of the type of news that kind of appeals to Black folks. A lot of it is entertainment focused, but especially as kind of what, with the Black Lives Matter movement, we've started reporting on more kind of social impact stories as well. So, the best broad way to look at Media Takeout is it's African-American news. And, in times of good, we're focusing mostly on celebrities, and, in times of things aren't so good, we can adjust our model also.
Cool. So you have an interesting background. So you're a lawyer by trade, is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to say that, because me being a lawyer is so far in the past that it's like, yeah, I guess I was at one point, right?
Right.
Just like I was a high school student and whatever else, right? But I do think that, being a lawyer kind of laid down an interesting and kind of a good foundation, particularly for me. One is I wasn't just any old lawyer. I was a lawyer working on Wall Street, working incredibly long hours with some of the brightest people in the world. And so, when I came from that, right? So my first kind of post-college professional career was kind of doing incredibly difficult work with supervision and people that are extremely critical of everything that you put out. And you had to work incredibly long hours in order to get the work done. And that's just my background. So I just, when I made the transition from law into entrepreneurship and eventually into media takeout, I brought that along with me. I brought along with me that I have to assume that the people around me and the people that I'm going to be competing against are going to be extraordinarily smart. They're going to be extraordinarily driven. And if I'm going to win, I'm going to have to be the same way.
That makes a lot of sense, man. So let's talk about you're working on Wall Street as an attorney, as a lawyer. Was Media Takeout your first foray into entrepreneurship, or did you do something prior to that?
No, it's actually, I'd always been interested in kind of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship is a word that I think is used a lot now, but right. When, 15 years ago when I was starting, entrepreneurship was seen as the word was, I think, a little bit different, right?
Right.
And entrepreneurship as I saw it then and as I see it now it's the idea of starting a business. I think a lot of times when people think of entrepreneurship, they think of Jeff Bezos or
right.
Mark Zuckerberg, who they are entrepreneurs clearly, and they got to where they are at some point. But they all started in the same part, right? Which is they started with a relatively small, lean staff. Right. They tried to create a business that produced either a product or service that was valuable to a customer, and then they grew it over time. So, wherever you're coming from, whether you're Jeff Bezos or me or, even the guy running the fruit stand, you are an entrepreneur and you're doing the same thing in general. Right. Yeah. But back to your question. So what was it my first entree into entrepreneurship? No, I mean, I when I was in school, I was working for a startup. And, when I was in school, I thought I was going to be a billionaire by the time I was 22, and then I'd be able to retire and take my yacht around the world and stuff like that. Didn't quite work out like that, but I learned a lot of lessons as I did that. And so the first business that I was in, while I had incredibly high hopes and learned a lot from it, it didn't work. The second business I started was post-law. That was the first business post-law, and that was a laundry and dry cleaning service. Okay. I kind of used a lot of the things that I learned from the first business and, what went wrong, what to avoid. And because I used that, and I think that it was a novel concept, it was very interesting, and we were able to get a lot of consumers. That business did pretty well, and we ended up, in fact, selling it. But then you had the third business, which was Media Takeout. That was kind of the culmination, right? And I had two kind of failed businesses, and to a lot of people, they could look at that and say, well, I guess the second one wasn't a failed business because I actually made some money on it. But it didn't turn out to be the way that I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. But, I took the kind of two experiences that I had in the past and I put it all together, and it's kind of like, it just all started gelling. And I, by the time when I was in the first business, I didn't know what I was doing and I knew what I was doing, right? The second business, I kind of thought knew what I was doing, but I was pretty sure I didn't. By the time I started Media Takeout, I was very confident that I knew what I was doing. And I think that, was part of the reason why we had success almost immediately with Media Takeout.
Fred, let me ask you, what was your first business?
So the first business was a telecommunications company called CLikeNet.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily my business because I wasn't the founder. Okay. But I was one of the kind of small founders.
Yeah. Okay. It's funny, man, because you said something that hit me right in my heart, man. You said back when you started, entrepreneurship, quote unquote, isn't what it is today. So I've been a serial entrepreneur. I left corporate America. I was a broker at Merrill Lynch, and I left and I started my first business. And over the 20 plus years that I've been in business, and I've owned over 17 or started 17 different businesses, half of them were garbage. I've learned from my mistakes. I had, two multi-million-dollar businesses, but I couldn't have got to that point unless I went through the other situations, because I always tell people, I said, realistically, it's very hard to start your first business and be super successful. A lot of times it comes after you've learned and taken some bumps and bruises. And when I started my first business, just like you, I left, Merrill Lynch making great money, and people were saying, you're an idiot. What are you doing? And it's entrepreneurship didn't have that cachet that it has now. So I remember, talking to, my wife and then my in-laws. They're like, "What are you doing, bro?"
Right.
But but now
I mean,
everybody.
the one thing is, what they were saying, that it was coming from a position of love, right? Like it wasn't, no one was hating on you. No one didn't believe in you. They just thought that you had something, a good thing right there, and they
Right.
couldn't see your vision, right? So that's all it was. They really were trying to do what was best for you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? When they were giving you that thing. And I think that's the way you have to look at it, right? Because a lot of time when you're joining, you start a new business, everybody's going to look at you like you're crazy, right? They're gonna, what do you know about this and whatever else, right? And some people just take that, internalize it, and think, oh, these people are hating on me. And some, don't get me wrong, there are going to be people out there that are hating on you. But the people that love you that are doing this, they're doing it's coming from a position of love. They just don't know what you know. They don't share your vision, and you may be completely correct in your vision. And so I think, when you have people coming out there and they're, giving you advice, because you get tons of advice, right? Like when you start a business, everybody got, oh, well, why don't you change this and do that? There's a lot of people that are going to give you advice. There's a lot of people that are going to, even try and dissuade you from going into entrepreneurship. I think you have to recognize that those people are not hating on you, or the people that love you and care about you. Those people are not hating on you. They're doing what they think is in your best interest, and you've just got to accept that. You don't have to necessarily follow it, especially if you're committed to your vision, but you can't let that kind of eat at your soul. You've got to kind of recognize what it is, put it to the side, and keep it moving.
Keep moving. That's great. Hey, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family, make sure you tuck that one away. That's light bulb should go off. I talk about that all the time. See, your vision was given to you. It wasn't given to everybody, and you have to remember that. So that's a great point, man. Man, I wanted to ask you, so when you started, and I do a lot of coaching, and I have like online courses too, along with the podcast. One of the biggest things people always ask me about is financing or getting funds to start their business. How did you transition after your second business with the laundry into Media Takeout, and how did you fund Media Takeout?
It's an interesting question, because the three businesses that I had kind of needed different amounts of funding to kind of get it off the ground. So Media Takeout, luckily for me, was the one that needed the least, right? Because to start something on the internet, you needed a domain name, you needed a server and all that, but the costs of that are relatively small. When we started the laundry service, it took a lot more capital, right? We had to actually have a warehouse, we had to have a relatively large staff, we had to have delivery vehicles, so that the costs of actually starting that business were a lot higher. The first business that we started, which was a telecommunications company, we actually raised more than $16 million for the company.
Wow.
That wasn't enough money to get the business going. So, the capital requirements kind of change depending on what type of business that you're in. And I'm going to be completely honest with everybody out there. We are Black folk. They are not going to give you the money like they're giving it to other people. So I think, you have to recognize that right off the bat. And, I understand it's unfair. There's a lot of great people out there that are working and trying to change that. But we are entrepreneurs, and we've got to just accept the facts for what they are. And so when you're choosing what kind of business that you're going to be going into, you have to make sure that you because of who you are, maybe your personal finances, maybe your background, maybe history, you have the ability to generate or to raise the type of capital that it takes to actually run that business. It's one of those hard realizations that you have to have. You have to look yourself in the mirror. You have to be honest with yourself, and you've got to just recognize that.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. When you started Media Takeout, take us back to that first day that you're in there. Now, did you have your office, or were you doing it out of the house? Were you by yourself? Or okay.
I was doing it out of my house. There was some time that you took, because it wasn't as easy as it is now to kind of get a website up and running. Right now, you can go on Wix, and within 5 minutes you got your website going, and there you go. Back then, you actually had to hire a developer. You had to put it together. So it took some time to actually put it together. So maybe it took like a month or so of kind of planning it and designing it and figuring out how to put it together. So during that whole time, you have all these dreams of what's going to happen when day one happens. And day one launched, and day one looked a lot like the day before, because nobody was coming on my website then. So, everybody was waiting, for this grand opening.
Right.
Someday, the door is going to open, and then customers are going to be flying. And it just doesn't work like that. You have to but you have to be prepared for that, because that could be damaging to your psyche, right? Like you could have, a lot of times people will plan, especially when they're trying to budget forward. They'll budget for like, month 1, we got 50 customers, month 2, we got 100 customers. And, you've got to recognize that on day 1, the day that you open up, you probably won't have any customers, and you got to have to fight and struggle for each one. And in the beginning, you are literally just fighting for one customer, and you've got to put all of your effort to get that one customer. When you get the one, you got to make sure that customer is happy, and then try and get a second one. And the third day, you're doing the same thing, and you just really are fighting for every single customer. And as you kind of grow, it gets easier. It's easier to get your 5th customer than it is your first, and it's easier to get your 10th. And so, but it is a struggle, and you have to recognize that is exactly what it is.
Man. Now I wanted to ask you, man, do you ever get threats by some of the stars and people that you have on your site, man? That was the first question I said. I told my kids, I said, I got to ask Fred that, man. It's an amazing thing, right? Because a lot of times people don't realize, like, a lot of these celebrities are, at least when I was a couple of years ago, I was friends with a lot of these people, right? Like we would go to parties, we would hang out. And now I could too, right? But now I'm kind of a different point in my life with family and all that. So I'm not really up in the clubs anymore. So I don't really do that anymore, but I could. And the reason why people are like, well, how is that? And the answer is this, right? Like at the end of the day, the most important thing to a celebrity, at least a celebrity that's very successful, the most important thing, or one of the most important things in their life, is to be and remain famous. Right.
And what we do is we make people famous. And so at the end of the day, you can't be that unhappy with the guy that makes you famous. Right. And so because that's the nature of it and the nature of the business, even when you have it, now don't get me wrong, on a day-to-day basis, right? They might see a story and they might not like it. They don't like that, right? But a week later, when we're reporting on something that they do like, or when we're reporting about something, one of their friends that they want to know more info about, and they call me up and say, oh, what was really going on that? Then it's a totally different ballgame, And remember, a lot of these people have been around for a while. So you've been interacting with them and their management over the course of years. So it's not like, you just met someone yesterday, right? Like but when they were nobody, you were kind of there and they were talking to you, and now there's somebody and you still got that relationship. So, because of that, and because we don't, we're really not into stuff like hip hop beef. The thing that I think will get you in problems is, when you start reporting on hip hop beef, or you start reporting on something that's going to mess up somebody's money, that's when people are going to get upset. But if I'm reporting on who you're dating, or, what your baby's mother said on Instagram, they're not worried about that.
Man, so let me ask you this, man, because I got tons of questions, bro, and I know the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family do too. How did you start getting the information? Were you aggregating it at first, or curating, and then you got your own sources, or how did you start getting the information when you first started, and how do you get information now that you put up on the site?
Okay, so when we first started, getting the information was actually really easy, because the information was always out there, but there wasn't really a platform to put it out.
Gotcha.
So if somebody did something crazy, right, and everybody knew it, everybody in the entire industry would know, because a lot of times it would happen in public view of everybody, right? And people didn't really have camera phones at the time.
Right.
So it would happen, everybody in the industry would know about it, but nobody would talk about it. And the reason why they wouldn't is because everyone in the industry kind of fell into a couple of categories. Maybe they worked at a radio station, and the radio stations wouldn't report it because the radio stations would want the artist to come on and do an interview on the radio station. So the radio station bosses would say, no, don't report on what you saw last night. Right. So people at magazines, and the magazines wouldn't report it because the people in the magazines wanted the celebrity to take a picture for the magazine cover so they could sell more copies. So all the editors of magazines would tell you can't do it. And TV worked the same way, Maybe they had a program on, or maybe you had, maybe if it was a 106 in Park, and maybe they wanted to bring a celebrity on as a celebrity guest, they couldn't do that. Something. So in the kind of traditional media that was around when we started, there really wasn't very many places for kind of entertainment news, gossip to be put out. So when we started, we didn't have any ties to celebrities in that way, right? Like we didn't need the celebrities to sell
Right.
on the cover. We didn't need them to interview. We made a conscious effort to not interview them so that we wouldn't have to rely on them, and that would affect our journalism. So we didn't need them. So it was kind of like a hole in the market. I mean, it's now it's kind of obvious to people. Oh yeah, everybody likes celebrity news. Why don't we
Right.
start a celebrity news site? But at the time, it wasn't obvious at all. Not even to Black people. So I think that to a lot of people out there, especially a lot of the entrepreneurs, and they're trying to figure out what kind of industry do I need to be in. They're always, all the time, you find holes in the market, and especially when it comes to Black stuff, right? Because a lot of times, you'll have a company that will deal with, they'll produce a good or service or news or whatever, and they'll do it for everybody. They'll say, there's a one size fits all kind of way to deal with this problem. And a lot of times that one size fits all completely excludes us, completely excludes Black people. And we as Black people are so used to being excluded that a lot of times we don't necessarily even see anything wrong with it. But if we were given an alternative that actually did serve our needs better, I believe that we would always take it. And I think, because of the nature of kind of the industries in this country and around the world, there really are these holes in the market, and you find them in all these different places. And that's why, I want more. And part of the reason why I do so many podcasts and stuff like this is because I want Black entrepreneurs to start thinking like that. I want the next Black entrepreneur to say, hey, look, I can create the next Facebook that works particularly well for Black folks.
Exactly. That's a great point. Finding holes in the market. And you're right. Most of the stuff that's put out there is for the general public, and it's not really focused on us. That's a great point, man. Fred, so let me ask you, in terms of when you put out information, is there a limit on what, if you got some inside information, is there a limit on what you would put out to the public? And have you ever, quote unquote, crossed that line, you think, or somebody told you so that you crossed that line? How do you manage to, make sure you're not crossing that line, I guess you could say?
I think you can put together kind of things, you can put together kind of systems, and we have that here. But I think what's the most important part is to respect your audience. At the end of the day, and that's why I said this is all really about kind of a consumer business, right? Like, it's like the guy in the fruit stand is trying to sell as many fruits as that are out there. Right. And, maybe if it's a day old, he'll sell it, but then it's 2 days old or 3 days old. At what point does the fruit stand guy say, this fruit is too old? Right. I can't in good conscience give this to my customer. One, because I respect my customer too much to give it to him. And two, because if I give my customer this garbage fruit, they're going to realize, oh, I have a garbage fruit stand and I'm never going to come back. Right?
Right.
So that same mindset and that same concept has been applied to our business, right? Which is that people always say, oh, the public is dumb. The public will believe anything that you say. You just kind of say it and they do it. That is the absolute wrong way to look at it. The public is very smart. The public will see and they sniff through BS very quickly. Maybe not initially, but quickly. And so you have to respect your audience, right? And respecting your audience means a bunch of different things. One is trying to put the most accurate things out there, but then more to your question is to not put things out there that's going to impact their soul and make them feel guilty for coming here. Be like, I'm kind of happy that I learned that, but you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't make me feel good knowing that I was a participation in that. And people do feel that, and I think a lot of times, people in the media don't talk about it as much. Maybe they don't think about it as much. But your audience actually, they care about these people, right? Like, you're writing about celebrities that these people are fans of. That's why they're interested in looking at it, right? They don't want to see their celebrities destroyed. They don't want to see their celebrities dragged through the mud. They don't want to see any of that. And you have to respect your audience and not do that, right? So it's one, it's just a personal moral thing. You don't want to do that.
Right.
But from an entrepreneur standpoint, you have got to do that because that's what your audience demands. That's what your customer demands.
Great response to that. So for today, you mentioned the technology back when you started 16 plus years ago. the technology available today, what would you say to somebody right now that is looking to create a media platform similar, say, to Media Takeout? Not necessarily the same thing, but just trying to create a media platform. What advice would you give them if they were starting that type of business?
I'd say it's definitely a lot tougher of a business to get into now than it was 16 years ago. I'd probably say you probably shouldn't. There are a lot easier ways to kind of go out and do it. What ends up happening is, when I started, nobody thought this was an industry, right? And then we come out there and we're successful, and other people come out there and they're successful. And then the whole world says, oh, look at all those successful Black folks over there that are doing it. Right. Let me go in that and I could be one of them, right? Mm-hmm. But you're going in there and you're playing in the crowded field. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to figure out what sport I'm going to get into to make it to the Olympics. Right. I choose basketball. Well, you better be, you better off choosing ping pong or, that other game, right. Because you're going to face less competition there, right? Like all of the best and strongest competition is right here. And that's the industry that you're going into, right? Like you're choosing the wrong way to go. I'm not like I said, I mean, maybe you have a vision and whatever else. And we talked about it earlier. If you have a vision and they can't see it, maybe I can't see it, go ahead and follow it. But I'm saying just from, if all things being equal, and that's the way I looked at entrepreneurship when I started out. I wasn't saying, oh, I want to go into media because I always wanted to do this. Or, hey, I wanted to go into laundry because when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be I wanted to have a laundry service. I looked at the market. And to me, that's what an entrepreneur is, right? Like this is business. This is not any personal goal or dream that I had when I was 5 that I'm trying to live out right now. I looked at the different markets. I said, what skill set do I have? What markets are open? What market opportunities are there where there isn't a ton of entrenched competition there? And that's the industry that I'm going to go for. And I think, if you're looking to start a business, that's the way you should do it. Now, after you listen to all this and you say, I don't care, Fred, I'm still going into media. What advice do you have for me? I'd say, be prepared to work really, really hard in kind of understanding your audience. The more time that you spend understanding your audience and what exactly it is that your audience wants, the better you are going to be at doing this job. The thing about the media, especially now, is things change so fast. I mean, remember, wasn't too long ago that you could have like a dance craze that would last an entire year.
Right.
Then the dance craze lasts. Yeah, remember the dance craze lasts a summer, right? Like the shiggy and drink. Right. That was just like 2 years ago, right? Now a dance craze literally lasts a week. Yeah. We've gone from a year to a week, and I mean from a summer to a week in the matter of like two years, and that's just the way that it works, right? So when you have a business model, particularly in media, and it works, in 2 weeks. Yeah. You have to have something new. And then 2 weeks later, you have to have something new. And then 2 weeks later, you have to have something new. And that's just the nature of the industry that we're in right now. The people that have been around for a long time have kind of figured this out and kind of figured out ways to kind of combat it. I think to a person that's new, that's kind of coming in it might be a little bit overwhelming. But if you're gonna go in that realm, I'd say try to spend the majority of your time, and I try and spend the majority of my day, if I can, just trying to understand the consumer better. And I think when you think like that, I think you're on the right track.
All right. So the name Media Takeout, right? Where did that come from? How did you formulate that, or did you get it from somewhere else, somebody else?
So in the beginning, it wasn't clear to me that Media Takeout was always going to be kind of African-American news. It turned out to be that. But we wanted to kind of give ourselves a degree of flexibility. I think a lot of times when you see, African-American news platforms or African-American companies, there's something in the name that tells you that it's African-American, right? But with Media Takeout, I was like, well, I'm not sure that that's where we're going to be. So let's just see if we could get the flexibility. Everybody will look at it and know what it is, right? Like when you think about it, right? Like in naming it, Facebook doesn't say anything, doesn't really mean anything, right? A face in a book, right? Like Amazon doesn't say anything about books, right? So tying a name to what it is that you do isn't necessarily there. But the other side of it was that the idea was it would be like a takeout menu, right? So you'd have a list of stuff on it and you could choose. You could click whatever you wanted. So if you wanted like a sports story, you could choose from the sports side, and if you wanted a gossip story, you could choose from a gossip story. So that's kind of the history of the name, where it came from.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of figured that. I was thinking of a takeout menu. That's what I was thinking also. In terms of your monetization, where does your monetization come from with Media Takeout?
It's all advertising based. So
Okay.
Based on the more people that come to the site, or the more and the more advertisements that they see, is a direct reflect of the revenue that we generate.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, because I wasn't sure in terms of do you guys do any like native advertising also, where people can do, have their own ads on your platform also? Or
Yeah. I mean,
is it just
right? The digital advertising market has come a long way since we've started. So the way it works right now, and I think a lot of people are like, well, how does this thing work? You hear about this Cambridge Analytica stuff on Facebook and whatever. How does digital marketing work? And it works basically like, 16 years ago when we started Media Takeout, the way that it worked is you bought an ad on Media Takeout, and that was shown to everyone that went to Media Takeout, right? And so that was the way. And I think that a lot of times people think that's the way that ads work now, and they really don't. Now ads aren't tied to Media Takeout. They're tied to you. So the ads that you see follow you wherever you go, right? So if the ether out there wants to show you a car ad, they're going to show you a car ad. They might show you the car ad on Media Takeout. They might show you the car ad on Instagram. They might show you the car ad on somewhere else. But it's, the ads are being targeted to you, and not so much you ads that you purchase going on to Media Takeout.
Also, so my next question for you is, man, your sources. I know now, after you've been in business for a while, how do you get your sources for information, since you're not out there partying with the with the stars anymore?
Yeah. I mean, remember too, like the world has changed so much, especially with people on social media, right? Like the idea that you have to kind of be right there with them, at a party or something like that. That's kind of the old way of doing it now. You have relationships with people that, long time relationships that are years long, that are completely online, right? Like somebody that you talk to a lot of times, maybe through text, maybe through DMs. So, we have relationships with so many people in the industry, managers and, artists and, publicists and, and so many of them, producers and directors and whatever that after you've been in the industry for a long time, you just build out this network, so that if you do see something happen, you see on Twitter something happened with a particular artist, 3 people around that artist that you could call and say, what's the real deal, what happened, and they'll tell you off the record exactly what happened, and then you can go out there and say, a source told us blah blah blah.
Gotcha. That's what I was going to ask you about, that with the sources. So has there ever been a situation where there was something that you wanted to publish, but you decided not to do it because of personal relationships?
Yeah, it happened a lot more in the past. Because like I said, I would be friendly with celebrities, and I had more celebrity friends.
Right.
But you realize that, when you have them as your friends, then they'll call you up, or they'll be like, listen, don't, help me out on this. Don't report this or whatever else. And you feel kind of obligated to do it, right? These are actually your friends, right? Like, it's like one of your bros call you up and be like, yo, don't do me like that, right? So, at that point, there were certain celebrities I was just like, I can't really, there was a couple that I just was like, look, I'm just gonna tell you, we cannot report on you at all, good, bad, anything. We're just gonna have to just not report on you, because if we're gonna be friends, we're gonna report on you. Even if we report on something good on you, you're gonna tell me something in the comments if you don't like, and ask me to change this around. So eventually, now I'm just kind of at a different point in my life where I'm like, look, I just can't be friends with anybody like that. I'm completely respectful to people. I'm nice to people. You know, I'm friendly with people, but we can't be cool because of the business that I'm in.
Do you guys have an office now, and how big is your staff?
So we have a staff of 13 now, and we did have an office, but like now with being in New York, the restrictions are kind of crazy. So,
Right.
you know, luckily the majority of us, other than me, were actually working most of the time remotely. So when, you know, everything went down, we were able to just kind of go all remote. And I haven't been to the office in, 6 months. Who knows what, the future of kind of office space is going to be. But right now we're doing okay without it. And, we'll see.
Yeah, that's something. Now you had mentioned earlier, Fred, bless you, brother. You had mentioned earlier about how quickly things change. So with your type of platform, it seems like you have to be on point or on call 24/7, man. How do you manage that? Do you have a rotational, so if some news breaks or whatever at 2:00 in the morning, somebody's going to make sure that that information gets up on the site? How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's got a typical kind of news desk, right? Like somebody's always manning the news desk 24 hours, it's ready to go. And then, you could figure out ways to kind of split off tasks to those people so they're not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs at 2:00 in the morning, waiting for something to break.
Right.
But yeah, so that's typical of the news business. And you could look at us or you could look at CNN or anyone else. We all kind of do it in some similar way. So it wasn't like I had to kind of figure that part of it out. It was already kind of figured out. People have been doing this for whatever, 20, 30, 40 years.
Right. Now, do you have a bureau? We had talked before we started recording about you being based in New York. Do you have a bureau or do you have people working for you out in LA to handle that different time frame?
So we don't have people in LA, but we have writers in Houston and Atlanta and Miami. So because we have people kind of everywhere, and Houston could kind of get to, a lot of the LA stuff. So if something breaks really late at night, the Houston people usually take it. And if it's early in the morning, it's more so the East Coast people. But as far as LA goes, LA it's an interesting place, but especially when you're talking about kind of like a lot of the stuff with Black celebrities and African American celebrities. For a long time, it wasn't that important at all. So most people were like, "Oh, you have to be out in LA," but it was like a lot of the times, like a lot of actors lived in LA. But most of the entertainers lived on the East Coast somewhere, right? Like they lived in Atlanta or they lived in New York or they lived in wherever else. That's starting to change and more people are moving to LA. And so there's more kind of interest in what's going on out there. So, maybe in the next year or so, we will pick up somebody out there.
For media takeout in the upcoming future, are there going to be any iterations to it? Are you going to branch out? Like television, like TMZ now has the TV show. What are your thoughts for your next version, or is there a next version of MTO News?
Yeah, we're working on some interesting things. I think since we've been around 16 years, we had a chance to kind of hit all the kind of traditional ways, right? Like there's the TV, like the obvious thing is, hey, why don't you have a TV show just like TMZ? And we went down that road. We talked to almost everybody that you can talk to about something like that. And there was tons of interest from it. But the question is, would we be able to produce something that's of high quality? So the kind of thing that I think people would be interested in. And, to a certain extent, I wanted to do it, right? Because it's kind of cool, especially you go out to LA and, all the glitz and glam and you're like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have this too? But then you realize, like at the end of the day, this really isn't about me and whether it would make me feel good. The question is this something that the audience wants, what they're talking about? And so with TV, we looked at radio, we looked at everything. We looked at movies, right? Like we literally looked at everything over the last 16 years. And there was all kinds of interest all around. And eventually, You know, there's another project that we're working on right now that I think is innovative and in a way that is completely non-traditional, something that none of our competitors are even thinking about.
Okay.
And it kind of takes me back to kind of what I was saying before with MTO, right? Like, which is, you know, when the advice I was giving someone, would you go into media, right? Like, it's the same reason why I wouldn't go into TV. Why am I going to go into TV when there's tons of people out there that have been doing this for a long time? The TMZ show has been around for 10, 15 years, and people know how to do a really, really, really good job on it. Am I just going to come up and I've never done a TV show before in my life? You know, I guess I could find some people to come together, but what are the chances that we're going to produce something that's going to be as interesting as the TMZ, that those people have been working on it for 15 years, right? So if you're going to compete against people, and especially as a Black business, whoever I'm competing against is going to probably be bigger and have more money, right? So they're going to have those two advantages. I got to have an advantage if I'm going into it. And so that's why I think we're looking at it. I'm looking at kind of another extension that's extremely non-traditional. It's something that I think is something that our audience actually wants. And I don't want to give away too much of it, but you know, I think your audience will learn about it in the next couple of months. And it will be just to kind of.
Can I get that exclusive scoop, man?
Yeah. Once it comes out, man, I'll give it to you. Once it comes out, I'll give it to everybody, right? So first come, first serve.
That's what's up. That's cool. Have you ever thought about an exit plan for your business? Where is MTL going to be in 5 years? What is there an exit plan for you, or are you just going to keep rolling? What's your thoughts on that?
A lot of times people ask that, right? And I think it's a valid question to ask anyone, right? And the way that I look at it, and there's been tons of people that have come to me and said, hey, look, we want to buy you or whatever. But you got to look at it from kind of the other way, right? Like, this is my third business, so I know what it's like to kind of sell a business and then kind of do it, right? Like, I'm still a young man. Let's say I were to sell Media Takeout, right? Like, so I sell it, and then what, right? Like, I guess I'm not the kind of person who's just going to sit around the house and do nothing. Then I'm going to either have to go get a job, which I don't want to do, or I got to start something else new, right? And which is kind of like, okay, I got to do all that over, and I'm not necessarily ready to do that either, right? So from a selfishly emotional thing, running Media Takeout has been the best job that I've ever had. And in addition to being the best job I've ever had, I see my friends that are out there running other companies and doing other things and whatever else, my colleagues, their job isn't as good as me, and they're all looking at me like, damn, Fred's got a great job over there, you know? So it's kind of like, why would I give this up? You know, why wouldn't I, if it's working and it's kind of continuing to generate? And if I were to get out, then I would just have to go out there and do something probably that I don't want to do, and certainly not as much as this. It's kind of like, why would I do it? Right. There was an old joke. There was a guy, and he was an investment banker, and he took a trip to Mexico, and he saw this like a guy fishing. He was a villager, and he was fishing in Mexico, and he went over to the villager and he said, wow, you know, I love what you're doing, you know, with the fishing. You're really, really good at it. You know, I can figure out a way so that you could, instead of catching 5 fish a day, you catch 50 fish a day, and then you can get like a big house, and then you could hire a whole bunch of people, and, you know, you can turn this into a whole business. And then the guy would be like, well, why do I want to do that? He said, well, then you could be rich. And then he said, well, what happens when I'm rich? He goes, well, then you could do whatever you want to do. And he said, well, I like fishing. So it's almost like, you know, you could do all this other stuff to then do what? To do if you love what you're doing right now, it's kind of like, why go through that whole process to just kind of end up being back doing what you love?
It's true. So when you can make your money doing what you love, man, there's no better place than that. Better place than that.
Right. And it's not just me that thinks this way. I mean, you think about it, a lot of people think this way, right? Like, if you look at, like, let's say you're talking about a basketball player or whatever else, they're doing what they love. Football player, athlete, right? They're doing what they love, right? They're getting paid a ton of money, but they're doing what they love. I mean, LeBron James, if he wanted to, he could probably leave the NBA, go to China and make more money, right? But he's not doing that because he's like, I want to play with the best competition in the world. I want to, you know, be on this big stage and do this. he's doing what he wants to do. It's not really about money. Don't get me wrong. He's getting paid a ton of money, but it's not about money to him. It's not about money to me. A lot of the artists that are doing what they're doing, they say it. And I think a lot of times people that are listening on the other end, they're like, come on, that's not true. You're doing this all because of the money. Some people are, but I could tell you I'm not. And I know a lot of people, the people that I see that are, that I find incredibly successful really are not doing it for the money. They're taking the money because they're not fools, but they're not doing it because of the money.
Right. For the money. Right. Is there a limit on the number of news stories that you do each day? Is there a minimum or maximum that you try to stay in, or is it just what the market bears or what's happening?
Yeah, we try and hit 17 stories a day. So that's kind of the goal. And sometimes you go a little bit over it, sometimes you go a little bit under it, but that's kind of the general number that you're looking at. And remember, most people are not looking at 17 stories, right? Most people are looking at 3 stories or 4 stories. Some people are only looking at 1 story. But and that's where kind of metrics kind of come in, right? Because a lot of times people say, oh, well, if people are only looking at 4 stories, why don't you put only 4 stories up there and just put 4 really good stories up there? And there's some metrics that say that. But what you really want to do is you want to have a diversity of opinion, right? Like, so maybe some people are more interested in the sports stories. Maybe some people are more interested in social impact stories. Maybe more people are interested in hip hop stories. So you want to give people a little of all of them. And then you also want to put something in there that's a little bit non-traditional, because you're also trying to see where the wave is going in the next 2 years, right? In the next 2 weeks. Remember, 2 weeks, everything changes, right? So 2 weeks, we're reporting on right now in 2 weeks, completely gone. It'll look like a completely different site. People don't really recognize that because they're looking at the site day to day and they think it looks the same as it did 2 weeks ago. But if you look back at the stories we reported 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, you look at the stories we're reporting on today, it's completely different people, completely different everything. So you really are constantly trying to figure out what is going to be hot in 2 weeks. So you put the stuff that's hot now, different things, and then you're going to sprinkle some other stuff in there to see, is this going to be the next hot thing in 2 weeks? And then the stuff that's at the bottom that you're kind of playing around with bubbles up to the top, and then 2 weeks later, it's kind of the stuff at the top.
So you have that curation strategy down to a science, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's science and art, right? Like, there's a lot of people out there that think it's all science and they just, do all numbers, which is true. There's good to kind of look at the numbers and make sure that you're following them. But at the same time, there's an art to it too. It's kind of like basketball, right? Like, they're the analytics guys. They'll tell you, oh, you got to shoot this 3 here and shoot the 3 there. But you got to have basketball guys in there too that kind of know the game and understand it. And so that's kind of us, right? Like, you have our analytics guys that tell us do this, and then you have kind of strict media people, and then there's me who just kind of understands the audience.
So with this, what a lot of people call new media, even though you've been in the game 16 years, you're not traditional, so to speak, media per se. What do you think is the next level for quote unquote new media? So obviously everything right now is online, and is streaming is obviously OTT, over the top, streaming and stuff is going on right there. What do you see as the next worlds to conquer? What do you think media is going from here?
I actually think that the media is in probably one of the most interesting spaces that it's been in 50 years. And the reason why is because traditionally, media has gone, the price of content has gone kind of up, and slowly kind of creeped up. And all of a sudden, at some point in the last 5 years, the price of content has gone down to 0. So, most of the people that you see, for example, perfect example is on YouTube, right? Like, you might see someone on YouTube and they have 1 million views on a video. You might think, oh man, that person's making $1 million. They got 1 million views. Would it surprise you if I told you that the majority of people that have 1 million views, the vast majority of people that have 1 million views on a video, actually spent more to create that video than they got back from YouTube? The majority of them. Now, think about that for a second, right? Like, I'm not talking about the person that got 2,000 views. Clearly, that person spent more than that. The person with 1 million views, that tells you that the market values content at 0, right? At least user-generated content, right? Like, The only way you're going to make money
Right.
on a YouTube channel right now, if you have highly produced content, is you have to be selling something ancillary, or you have to be asking for Patreon. You cannot make it just by producing high quality content on YouTube and making money. And that's where everybody's producing their content, right? So we're living in a world where the value of content is zero.
Wow.
And that's just, that is a completely untenable world. Like that will not last. And the reason why it's lasts is because you only have one place to put your videos, right? Like you have no choice but to put your videos on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't pay you, so the value is nothing, right? Like if there were just even one other place to put it, if you had a choice between YouTube and let's say one other place, you would find that YouTube, I mean, Google is a $1 trillion company, right? Google could easily pay these people, but it just doesn't, because why would it if it doesn't have to? So if it had one other competitor out there, you would immediately see the price of everybody else would go up, because people would say, hey, look, YouTube isn't paying me, I'm going over to somewhere else. And you're starting to see the outline of true competitors kind of coming. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily see it. But when you look at like what happened with TikTok, right? And I get it, the TikTok is a billion-dollar company, and you know, it grew, but for a competitor to come out of nowhere that quickly and actually start winning, it makes you wonder, is there another competitor coming along, or is it even out there right now that we can't even see? And when that happens, and everything frees up, right? It's the same thing with, I mean, think about like when Netflix came up, right? Like the value, everyone was talking about the value of movies were going down, 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 down. All of a sudden, Netflix came out and Amazon Prime came out, and all of a sudden people were getting $100 million deals again, right? And that's because competition always allows this to happen. There's tons of money out there, and it's just a matter of competition. So I know that there's tons of content creators out there that are around and looking and saying, how can we get more money? I'm telling you, and you know, you just got to hold firm, but it's coming. It's right around the corner. I mean, if TikTok were to get as big as we expected, as it looks like it's going to get, it would get you the money that you're talking about, right? Because you have a choice. You have TikTok and Instagram, right? Or TikTok and YouTube. Now you got it. Now it's like, you know, Instagram can't just say, hey, look, I'm just going to, you know, I'll block your channel. I'll demonetize this. I'll do whatever. They can't say that, because you'd be like, oh yeah, you're demonetizing me? I'm cutting my thing off. I'm going over there and I'm telling everybody to follow me. They don't want that to happen. And all of a sudden that changes behavior. So I think once you have competition, things change. Now, is that happen? Is that coming? I think it is. I don't know that it's coming from, you know, from a person that looks like us, but it's coming.
That's a great point, man. My oldest daughter, she used to be at NBC Universal out in LA. Now she actually's in New York at Squarespace, the web development company, and she works in the marketing department where they pay the actual YouTube, you know, stars. So they have their own marketing, and she's just telling me, she's like, Dad, these, you know, if you're really up there, she said, these guys are making tons of money. And you're right, if that's the only place to go. But if there's competition out there, how many of those people would stay there and move over to another platform? So that's a great insight, man. I never even thought about it like that. And you're right, man. Content is it's everywhere. It's free, and I guess there has to be some type of incentive or hook for people to go. And obviously, with your site, if you want to find out you know, what's happening with Black folk out here, Media Takeout is your spot, man. How do you compete with, and I guess you're probably at a position being in the game so long, like you have Bossip, you got World Star, and those type of guys. How do you compete, or do you even try to compete with them, because you're probably the lead dog in the race anyway?
Yeah, I mean, look, we compete with, there's tons of places out there. There are new sites that pop up every day, and they compete with you. I think a lot of times, especially younger or new entrepreneurs, they get kind of caught up in this, and they start thinking, how can you beat the competition?
Right.
And it's true. You have to think like that, but you don't, right? Like the idea is not beating them, right? Because whoever them is changes, right? Whoever them is, you know, 5 years ago, it was a different them, and 5 years before that, it was a different them.
Yeah.
You really have to try and win, right? Like it's not about beating them. It's about you winning. And so if you just continually think like that, you're always going to get better. And, you know, as hard as it is to accept, the more competition you have, the better and tighter that your ship is, right? Because the one thing that, you know, lack of competition does is it makes you lazy, right? Like if you think you're already winning, you're like, well, why do I really have to get up at 2:00 in the morning to do this? Or do I really, I just go to I want to go on vacation with my family. Should I really postpone my family vacation because of that? But if you got competition on your heels, you're like, yes, I'm going to do it. And your company's going to get better. The industry is going to get better. So there's always been strong competition. This is entertainment. There's always going to be people in this space. There are always going to be new entrants in here. And you just have to accept it. That's what it is. You decided you wanted to go in entrepreneurship. That's the nature of entrepreneurship. To just have competitors left and right and, you know, constantly try and win. And it's every day you're trying to win. There's no day off where you can just kind of cruise. But this is a life that we've all chosen. So, you know, you can't get upset about kind of the natures of it because it has great rewards too.
Not going to hold you much longer, bro. I got about 2 questions for you. The first question I wanted to ask, for entrepreneurs that are looking to start a media company, not necessarily with celebrity news or things of that nature, but, you know, be it a curation site or aggregating content or things like that. How did you start when you staffed? How did you start staffing? Who was your first hire and what is your staff? What is it comprised of right now?
So initially I would do all of kind of the choosing of articles. So I don't know what you can call that. So I would choose which articles would be on Media Takeout, and then someone else would do all the writing and the reporting, right? So it would be, and that was just because, like I said, I think my skill set is kind of understanding what it is that people want, but it isn't necessarily going out and doing the grind of actually doing the reporting. And so that's the way it kind of worked. And then as we started doing more original reports, we started staffing with a lot more reporters. Eventually, we decided to kind of just like create a culture where it's not just, you know, one person that's choosing it, but, you know, everyone is kind of on board with the idea of what kind of articles work for the audience. So once we kind of put that together, then I was able to kind of take a step back in large part from the day-to-day kind of operations, what articles are going up, who's saying what about whom, and you're able to kind of do more of the managing and running of the business, which I think is what it is. So to the person that's out there and thinking, okay, how do I staff this? What do I do with this? I would say, at least initially, do it all yourself, because you really want to understand every piece of this game.
Right.
And that, you know, we talk about the entrepreneurship culture, and there's a, you know, tremendous upside to the entrepreneurship culture. Obviously, I believe in entrepreneurship, especially for Black people. I want us to continue to do it. But because of that, there's this freelancer culture that I guess is kind of alongside the entrepreneurship culture. And freelancers are just kind of out there trying to kind of hustle to make their ends meet. And so a lot of times what people will staff up their companies with freelancers, and freelancers don't really have a vested interest in seeing your company grow, right? Like they're just trying to come over there, get their check, and then just keep it moving, right? And there's a place for that. But if you're looking to kind of create a business, create a culture, you know, you want people that are invested in the industry, right? Like they're not just gonna come over there, do their job, say goodbye, and then just kind of walk out. They're gonna try and actually build this, right? Like they're gonna feel happy when the business is building and it's growing. You know, not someone that's just gonna, you know, come over there and do it for a little while and see what you're doing and say, hey, I'm doing all the work. Let me go over there and start a competitor site because I'm doing all the work anyway, right? And so, you know, it's kind of two different ways of looking at it. You really want to have people that are invested in the company, and at least initially, that's only going to be you. You may be able to convince a couple of people to do it, but you know, if you don't have any traffic, you don't have any traction, how are you really going to convince anyone to do it? At least anyone with any real talent, right? Like, why would they believe that you're going to kind of do this? So you want to just build it, understand it, right? And then you'll actually understand the different roles in the company. After you've been doing something for a couple of months, you'll understand what's needed. You'll understand that there's a person that needs to be managing this stage of this part of it. There's a person that needs to be managing that part of the business. And you'll know, you'll be able to look at your own time, see how much time you're spending on each part, and see what areas you need to hire out to get help in. So, you know, especially if you're doing something new, you really have to just go all the way in, almost on the ground floor, and do it. And that's what I think a lot of people don't want to do, especially if you have another, if you have another job, you have family obligations. A lot of times people think, what I'd rather do is I would rather just kind of save up and then pay someone to do it. And that's the biggest mistake that you can make, because you're paying them to understand your business and you're not understanding it. You want to understand as much of it as you can from the gate. And then when you already know it, you do it. It's kind of like, you know, the McDonald's, right? Like before you go buy McDonald's, you know, I don't care how much money you have. They want you to go to work at a McDonald's and work as a manager for a certain amount of time, because they want you to understand exactly what it means to run the business. Even if you have the money to buy it and then hire your own manager and just kind of let it go, they still want you to go over there and do it, because they understand that the success of your business, your franchise, is going to be because you spent that, you know, 6 months or whatever it is in that store actually running it. So, you know, when you're starting out fresh,
Hamburger you.
Yeah, it's like it's a company, you know, especially if you're talking about a company like media that has not a lot of, has a lot of startup expenses, right? So you're saving money, and, you know, you don't have to build a building, you don't have to put up signage, you don't have to get vehicles, you don't have to get a lot of other stuff. Just you save money on that, go into it. And if you don't know how to do it, or you don't want to do it, or whatever else, then maybe you should rethink about whether or not this is something that you really want to do, you know? Because whether or not, you're going to be spending so much time doing this, you know, it's going to be such a big part of your life. You're going to be talking about it with all of your friends until they're sick of hearing it. You're going to be doing, this is going to be such a big portion of your life. You want to immerse yourself in it just to know. If you don't like it, then don't do it, right? Because why are you putting yourself through this, right? Like for the money, there's so many other ways that you can go out there. You can get a second job, right? Get a second job, and all of a sudden you will find that you're going to be exploding with money, right? There's the easiest way to make more money is just get a second job, right? Like you're already doing this as a second job anyway, right? You're just not getting paid, and then you're in fact paying someone for your second job. If you actually got a second job that paid you, you know how much money you have? People don't think, I mean, this is not, you know, entrepreneurship is, you know, a tremendous investment, but it's going to cost you a lot of money and a lot of time. And if you just instead said, I'm not going to do entrepreneurship, I'm just going to take that time that I was going to put to entrepreneurship and literally get another job, you would save that's from a financial standpoint, you will make a whole lot more money. And even from an expected value standpoint, you will make more money to do that. When you're doing entrepreneurship, you're not doing it to make money. And the people that think you're doing it because you're going to make more money on the other end.
Right.
I mean, it works out for some of it. It worked for me. I'm sure it worked for you. You know, so it's hard for me to say that because it does happen. But I don't think that's the reason why you should go into it. You should go into it because you want to do something different, or you find that whatever it is, something about your personality, whatever, that does not fit in the traditional corporate workplace. And that was me. And that's why I did it, right? And it wasn't so much about money. And in fact, when I did it, you know, and I talked to my wife about this, and I remember telling them when we did entrepreneurship, I was like, you know, I would literally see myself as a success if I could ever get to the point where I'm making the amount of money that I just turned down over there.
Right.
That was a success for me. You know what I mean? Because I was like, if I could make the money that I made yesterday, doing it on my own, I won, right? So that was the only thing I was looking for. I wasn't the idea of kind of going out there and like, you know, having the success that I've had now. That was completely, I mean, that was, you know, in the back of my mind, I kind of thought it and whatever else, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was, I'm in this rat race. I'm in this environment, which I should be happy with. And I see a lot of other people are happy with, but I know it's not for me. And it's only a matter of time before everybody else in this building realizes it's not for me. And then they're going to kick me out. And then I'm going to be like, what do I do?
Right.
So I'm getting out before they kick me out, right? So
Yeah,
that's the way I looked at it.
yeah. Your analogy of working two jobs, man, as opposed to starting a business. You're right. Some people think that starting a business is the be all, the end all. But if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you might as well go get a second job and bank that paper. That makes a lot of sense, man. And I also like the fact that, people have to recognize, like me, I'm not cut out for corporate. I knew very early on that, I did my job well, but I knew that there was more, I was destined to do something that I felt that I had an interest in. So one of the things I always talk about is my new book is coming out, Pinpoint and Monetize Your Genius. And I define your genius as the intersection of your passion and talent. And so if you can monetize that, I believe if everybody had their druthers, they would be making money doing something that they love to do. Just like your analogy with the fisherman.
Yeah.
Hey, he loved to do it. So that's why with Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, yeah, they do want different. Yeah, they want different things. So that's why with the podcast, I always try to tell people, they ask me, what business should I start? I don't know. You got to tell me, what do you like to do? What are you good at? What will somebody pay you for? And that's kind of how you can narrow it down. And just like you said, also looking for holes in the marketplace, where there are opportunities that you can take advantage of. Man, brother, I could sit here and talk to you, man, for all day because you talking my language, bro.
Yeah, I know. I got you.
You talking my language. This is what I do. Man, I'm not going to hold you, but the last thing I wanted to do, man, how can people connect with Media Takeout and Fred M?
As far as Media Takeout, you could go to MediaTakeout.com or MTO News, and you can get the latest celebrity gossip. It's the best out there. And as far as me, I'm not really on social media that much.
Okay. Gotcha. Behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm kind of behind the scenes on that. What I try and do is I'm just trying to I know what it was like to be an entrepreneur and not know what you were doing. Like I said, I started 3 businesses. The first one, I had no idea at all. I had no one telling me what to do. I was just going over there blind, pretending that I knew what I was doing.
Right.
And slowly I was kind of figuring these things out. And it was always bothering me that I'd be like, how come I don't know this stuff, right? And so now that I'm a little bit more seasoned and I see entrepreneurs all the time, friends of mine started a whole bunch of other companies, right? So I'm in a different space than I was back then. And what I see young white entrepreneurs and I see what they do.
Right.
And then I see young Black entrepreneurs. And it's clear to me that somebody's taught them, those young white entrepreneurs, something, because they know a lot of this stuff that I didn't know. And I look at the Black entrepreneurs and they're thinking like I was. Right. And there's like very, very basic mistakes in thinking that's there that will really derail them. And it costs me time and effort and money. But if I just knew what almost all these white entrepreneurs I see, they could be 21 years old and already know it. I'm just like, where did you learn this? Right? Like I went to business school, right? So, and I didn't learn it there, right? So, they have people that are coming on and telling them this and talking to them and whatever. Right. And a lot of us, we just don't have that. So I was like, you know what? I'm in a good place in my life right now, especially with the quarantine going on. I've got a lot of extra free time. I'm going to try my best to just tell every person that I can, give them all the information that I got for free. Not tell them, obviously, that, I think that it's great that there are people out you that are going out there. And obviously, I'm sitting over here for 5 minutes and doing it. You're putting together an entire program, and obviously you deserve to be compensated for what you're doing. So I think it's a little bit different. But I'm willing to just put out as much information as I can so that hopefully it'll land on the ears of the next Fred, who's 22 years old and doesn't know anything. And he sees this video and goes, this Fred guy, I gotta see him. I'm gonna look him up. I'm gonna find out everything he says, and I'm just gonna give him more information every time I can. And I try not to hold back. I try not to hold any secrets. There's nothing I'm holding in. Like, wait, I give you everything that you got because I think we need it. Because, like I said, I go out there and I see entrepreneurs all the time. A lot of people looking for investments and whatever. And I see that when I look at the Black entrepreneurs and I look at the white entrepreneurs, I can't feel good about just ignoring, looking away. And like, that's okay. It's not okay. And obviously there's no one around them that's giving them this information. For one reason or another, they haven't found places like you that can offer this type of information. So hopefully if I put this information out there in the world, it'll land on the right people. And then they'll at least start thinking a little bit differently. They'll find their way to a place like yours, and they'll be right on the way, on the right track of entrepreneurship, not the wrong track. Because there's too many of us that call ourselves entrepreneurs and are on the absolute wrong track.
Yeah, highway to hell. Because I'm telling you, you got to know what you're doing, but it comes from experience, man. Right. You know, taking those bumps, learning from those, and being able to move forward. Brother Fred, I want to thank you so much, man, for sharing with the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family, man. And BEB family, you know what we do, man. Y'all make sure you go on mtonews.com, support my brother. He's been out there doing it a long time, man. And I want to thank you so much, man, for hanging out with the BEB family today, bro.
All right. Thanks a lot, brother.
My man. That was an amazing interview with Fred Mwangaguhunga, the founder and CEO of MediaTakeout.com. Family, we got tons of takeaways, but before we do the takeaways, let me just share my social media contact information and all my resource links. So once again, I mentioned at the top, family, my new book is out, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses. If you're interested in building a successful, sustainable e-commerce business, go to anewblackwallstreet.com. Pick yourself up a copy. The physical book is $14.95 plus shipping and handling. The digital version, $9.95. Now, if you need additional assistance building your successful e-commerce business, my new flagship program, Brand Builder Academy Elite, which is bbaelite.com. It is a 15-week modulated program that drops one module every week, and it takes you from point A to point Z in building a physical products brand and or a digital products brand. It's e-commerce is where it's at, family. So just go to bbaelite.com, bbaelite.com. Once you enroll, fill out and use the coupon BBAElite100, and that's going to save you $100 off the price. It's only $97, and pound for pound, it's my best program. Now, if you're interested in getting your Black-owned products out there and selling to Black consumers, I created a site titled BeSmartByBlack.com, BeSmartByBlack.com. So if you're a Black product producer and you want to connect and sell to Black consumers worldwide, upload your product information, family. It's free. Okay, BeSmartByBlack.com. Now, I didn't forget about you freelancers. So if you do anything on Fiverr.com or Freelancer.com, I created another site to help circulate Black dollars in the worldwide Black community titled Hire Black Freelancers, HIRE, BlackFreelancers.com. Once again, put your information up, guys. It is free, so you can connect and sell your services to Black individuals and Black businesses that want to hire Black freelancers. Now, I know that's a whole lot, so you can go to bebconnect.com. That's bebconnect.com, and all of that information will be on there. Now, social media contact information. If it's anything long, family, hit me on my email, jjones@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com, JAYJONES@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. Facebook, just go to Facebook, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Twitter, jjones001. Instagram, jjones4real. That's JAYJONES, the number 4, REAL. YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you already know. Make sure you subscribe. Go to YouTube, type in Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, hit the subscribe button. Remember, I'm going to have additional content on YouTube that is not on the podcast. Yes, the podcast does come out on YouTube, but I have additional content on YouTube. Also, LinkedIn, find me there, J Jones Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Also, if you want me to come out and speak to an event, church, school, college, university, once this COVID breaks, just go to bookjjones.com, fill out the short form, and I'll get right back to you. And also, if you want to be included in the BEB text line for notifications and reminders about special events, text BEB to 555-888. That's BEB to 555-888. Once again, all of that information I just ran down is at bebconnect.com. Now, let's get back to some takeaways with the interview with Fred. So Fred was dropping nothing but jewels in here today, guys. One of the biggest things that I really took away from this is he talked about capital or access to capital. And it is true, unfortunately, we don't have the same access to capital as other ethnicities, and we need to recognize and understand that. And in doing so, guys, we need to start businesses that we're able to capitalize or have enough capital on to be successful. There's nothing worse than having a great business idea and not being able to execute the idea because of lack of capital. So sometimes, guys, we have to start out at one level and parlay until we get those funds or get access to them through some form or fashion, and then you can take it to where you need to be. Another thing that he talked about that was really interesting to me is how he started his business. Okay, he looks for gaps in the market. Once again, there's several ways. Find a problem, solve that problem. Work on your passion, okay? Or, once again, look for gaps in the market. So at the time when Media Takeout came out, there was a big gap in entertainment news in the black community. And what did Fred do? He filled that gap with MediaTakeout.com. Media Takeout right now, I believe, is 16 years old, Fred said, and they're doing over 15 million plus views, page views a month. So the monetization on that, once again, is the advertising. And Fred kind of talked about that. So it's not banner ads on the site now. It's called Programmatic Advertising. So some of the things that you previously searched for, when you go on the Media Takeout site, you're going to see that stuff. It's going to follow you around the net. But when you get the eyeballs, then you can get the actual revenues. So 15 million plus visitors a month to the site is crazy. And so that's how you can monetize it. When I asked Fred about starting media companies, once again, he was saying it's going to be much tougher now in terms of getting traction than it was before, but it is easier in terms of setting up a website and getting out there and start producing content. And Fred mentioned something very interesting about content. He had mentioned like content has zero value. So because there's so much content out there, unless you're coming with something a little different, you know, it's tougher to get that traction. But this was an amazing interview. Fred dropped all types of gems in there. Once again, guys, you know exactly how we do it here. So please support his site. He's been rocking and rolling for a long time, doing great work. And once again, you heard what he just said on the interview. He has no problems spitting game and getting people to level up their business. He recognizes and understands what situation we as black folk are in. And once again, he's willing to come and share all his experiences and his know-how with the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. So please, guys, support his site. Go check it out. Some good articles on there. And before we close out, like I say each and every week, family, please continue to spread the word about Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, the podcast and the blog. Guys, this is more than just a podcast and a blog and a YouTube channel. It's a movement. It's about building an economic power base in the black community. And each and every week, guys, we get more and more downloads, and that's because of you, the BEB family. Please continue to spread that word of mouth, social media, anything you need to do, because we got to get that good word out here and make sure that we start building an economic power base. I got the shirt on, no revolution without economics, family. And that's where it all starts, and that's where it all ends. Love you guys. See you same time next week. Peace.